I have changed the microphone input. Let's see if this works. I've been having issues with the new mic. I apologize. I have changed the microphone input. Let's see if this works. I have changed the microphone input. Sweet. Let's see if it... That looks good. If anything comes up, please let me know. And yeah, it must be a USB issue because I've been having problems with this microphone. It seems to work fine during the videos I record, but on Zoom calls, on live streams, there's just a lot of noise in the background. Thank you for that. Let me turn down my mic a little. Sorry, there's going to be a little trial and error here. On Zoom calls, on live streams, the new mic is good with the background noise, but the old one, it's going to capture everything because it's just going from my computer. It might just have to be something we deal with here. Bog price prediction. What's up, Bog Father? I've missed you guys. It has been a summer. I've been doing a lot of fun things. Let's get into this here. Here we go. I've been traveling a little, spending time with family, and it's been a good time. Let me make sure that the screen transitions. But you know, it's summertime. You got to do those things while you can, while the weather's nice. And it looks like things are good. Sweet. Let me do the intro quick. Welcome, Market Psychology. Glad y'all are here. We're going to look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. We have requests from A.Dev. When is a good buying point for ETH? Heck, let's get into it. I wondered, did you watch my Ethereum video today? What do you think about it? And then some comments about the mic. I apologize. I'm not frustrated. I'm more so annoyed because I bought this new mic with the money that Google sent me. Google sent me money because y'all are fantastic and give me enough views that I get $100 every 3 or 4 months from you guys, so thank you. And the mic was doing great until recently. I will say, however, I mean, this is classic. I get this from my IT person through my work. I'm bad about restarting my computer, and I probably need to restart it, and then I'll fix things. But I'm one of those that, like, I don't restart things often enough. I go to Vietnam for a vacation. Dude, I have a friend who is just in Vietnam, and they said that the Ha Giang Loop was the best part. In the north, it's like HA space GIANG. They did a 4-day thing, and they told me it was the best. Air Canada flight might be canceled due to strikes. I'm sorry. I hope you get to go. And what else were they saying there? Tell me something with the visa thing online was a mess. So make sure you get that done. But we're going to talk about ETH. What would be, let me get back to the question, try to answer it. What's a good buying point for ETH? Well, there's a couple ways to look at this. Let's make our fib on log scale again. Here we go. What is going on? So, it's on the brush mode. Sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? Let's make our fib back on log scale. We'll take a look at different targets, fib-wise, moving average-wise. So right now, this is just my current technical analysis. Anytime you have a big move up, look at this bottom. It's from April. I just want to help you keep things in perspective. That's what we do here on Market Psychology. We are 126 days. Yeah, we're 4 months in a 244% move. That's a big move. So big, we've gotten very extended from all our moving averages. Right now, ETH, it's just ripping, and Ethereum Bitcoin is doing very well. We'll go to that quick. I promise I'll give you an answer. I have to sort of set the stage here. Talked about this in today's video. Ethereum Bitcoin is overall ripped pretty high. I do expect a little bit of a pullback back to the 3-2 and the 50-week moving average. I'm curious. I don't know what price Ethereum is going to be, but if and when it comes back here, and I think it will, to 0.2, that's when I'd be looking at possibly getting back in the ETH. I think ETH, is it going to keep support at the 888? It might. Right now it's at the 20. It bounced off the 20 before. But if it gets under this 20 day moving average and the 888, that this 786 is kind of my bet at 3,400. It can always return back to the golden pocket here, but that would be a big move. That would be a big move down. What percent would that be? So I don't know if that would happen, another 40, 50% move. I wouldn't bank on it. Everyone and their mother is saying September pullback because September is the worst month. There's no certainties, only probabilities. So, I'm assuming seasonality-wise that September won't be great yet again. The stock market has ran very good lately, and so it seems we're due for pullback sooner than later. Let's take a look at, we've been up in greed on stocks for a bit, so it makes sense for a pullback. The rate cut things coming in September, there's a high probability of rate cuts. How big those are going to be, how is the market going to price it in? I'm kind of looking for a pullback, not so, throughout September, but kind of early September or even later this month. This is one of those almanac charts. We haven't really had the August dip, in my opinion. The July pump kind of went further. So, if this is the average, let's just push it out 30 days. That's what I'm expecting. And if we get a pullback, I would be taking a look at it by levels, 3,400. Here's another way you can look at it. I see a lot of people do this with their fibs. Of course, you have the moving averages, but you can go from the most recent low to high. Let's do that. And here's your discount levels. So 3570, 2980 or 3K. And then there's that 0.5 around here, the 618. I would say that 0.5, this whole area, I'd probably draw a box here as a can't miss area, in my opinion. Just from 2,500 to 2,700. Curious where the weekly moving averages are. Are there any weekly moving averages around there? I mean, the 200's coming up. 2,700's right underneath the 100-week moving average. I would say this would be can't miss, but realistically, I'd be expecting that 786's support. That's my long answer for you. I'm not going to tell you where it's going to go because I don't know. But when I look at dollar cost averaging in, this is me speaking and how I do it. If we do get a dip that's worth dollar cost averaging into a certain asset, I wait for the dip and then I wait for confirmation via certain indicators. We have our buy sell signal indicator here. I use Heikin-Ashi candles. This is a nice one. You can see we've been in a trend Heikin-Ashi wise for how many weeks now? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So around as you get close to 10 weeks, it tends to be the pullback area. We'll get the sell signal. After the sell signal's done, you'll get another buy signal. That's one way. But also on the weekly, stochastic and the MACD, you always got to put those together. I got to turn off. I have the free version. If I ever make more money, I'll spend some on the monthly fees for TradingView. But right now, the weekly is overbought. You can see the weekly MACD stochastic. It's going to reset on the weekly and then go back up. Now on the monthly, this is, in my opinion, very good. The monthly just turned bullish on the MACD. I think there's a lot of momentum. So the monthly is telling me don't expect too much of a pullback. Okay. So yeah, we've just jumped right into things here, but that's okay. I want to make sure I help out how I can with people who are here. All right. So when you get the time for it, can you point out where Ethereum's a good buy at? Even my flights are getting bonked, dude. I'm sorry. I hope it works out. I thought airline stocks were doing great recently, though that has nothing to do with a company striking or not. All right, bonk. Let's turn this fib back on log. And your question was price prediction. Ooh boy. I'm going to give you a weird answer here. So price prediction, we can look at fibs for price prediction. We have our fib high to low, but I think bonk is one of those that can blow this out of the water. And as crazy as it sounds, could it go up, over 900% and do that? Sure. What is bonk's market cap? I have to refresh this. But work with me here. Bonk's market cap is I know it's not too far down. I could just type it in, but I'm lazy. Its market cap is $1.7 billion. Okay, I compare bonk this cycle to last cycle's SHIB or Shiba. So I would say, where did Shiba get to last cycle? And I'd look for that market cap, if not higher. And is there a Shiba market cap? No, it's just Shiba US dollar. I'm looking for, the best one, the one I've charted before. Let's go back in time here. This one doesn't look like it's okay. It does show one of the 21 tops, but I swear it didn't come out that late. All right, here we go. Yeah, it came out a little earlier. So Shiba, how much higher was it from where it is now? About an 8x. And this one has a market cap. I'm just doing rough numbers here. Where is Shiba? Here we go. So 8 times 7, 40. Let's just say 40 to $50 billion. I would say, that would be a target that I'd be looking for bonk to get to at best. I'm not saying it will get there. Could bonk do a 20x from here, a 25x? If it does, I would get out. So that's where I use market caps as an indicator. I look at Pepe and bonk as last cycle's Doge and Shiba. That's just how I look at it. I could be wrong. And I bought some bonk myself recently when it got to the 236 in this area. I like it here. It is under its moving averages. It is under the 50-week moving average as well as a macro 382. So this thing could die further. And you can see by this fib that I have not looked at it in a hot minute. But if bonk comes back down to this 236 area, I think it's worth picking some up as it, again, gets that weekly buy signal confirmation. Obviously, it broke through there. We don't have to do that. But I will say, extend out these tops. Look for that 0.5 and that trend line to break. It has to get through the 382. It has to get through the 50-week. Oh, wait, this is Shiba. Jesus Christ. That is embarrassing. Let's go to bonk. Shiba was on the brain. Bonk, bought at the 236. Let's turn this fib back on. Where was the 236 recently? Okay. I was able to buy some down here. It's resting at the 50-week nicely right now. Ignore what I just said about SHIB. I compare the two so much I tricked myself. Now, if it stays above the 382 and the 50, that's great. And actually, if it turns around, all of a sudden you get a buy signal here, that's great as well. I was just talking about a September pullback. This 200-day moving average and the 50-week, they're lined up. So if it does break down, hopefully it holds support here. And if it does and starts to get confirmation up, and, we kind of have a trend line here. If it starts to break up and get through this trend line eventually, I think it can rip. And then you just have the 786 to deal with, and then away we'll go. And I think by the time a move like that could play out, that would line up with the 4-year cycle stuff. So those are my thoughts. I just bought 0.5 ETH at 4,100. A.dev says, and that's fine. I believe, this is my prediction, which doesn't mean crap. I believe Ethereum could get as high as 11K this cycle. I've talked about it before that, if Bitcoin gets to 155K, let's go to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin gets to 155K, what will its market cap be? its market cap will be around 3 trillion. We were just taking a look at Ethereum, Bitcoin. When it is alt season, Ethereum, Bitcoin pumps, and it has gotten to this level at around 0.4 the last 2 cycles when it's alt season. So if Bitcoin's at 155K and 3 trillion, Ethereum at 40% of 3 trillion is 1.2 trillion. Ethereum at 1.2 trillion has what as a market cap? Okay, so that'd be like a 2.5x. Okay, 2.5 times 4,200 is around 10 to 11K. So I think that's the ceiling for ETH personally. I saw something, Tom Lee, people like him a lot. They say the next generation's Warren Buffett. Maybe. He's calling for 17K ETH. I mean, sure, why not? If we see 200K Bitcoin, 17K ETH is believable. But I think it all depends. When are we going to get this cycle top? We got people shouting now for an early cycle top. That's becoming very popular. I think, this is the psychology part. I want to temper expectations, all because Ethereum, Bitcoin's doing well, and we've entered this phase 2 area. I talked about that in today's video. We are in phase 2, but I think people might be getting ahead of themselves and a bit too excited and saying, you know what, this is it. We're in alt season, guys. We're just in phase 2. We do not get alt season until Bitcoin tops and is too expensive to keep buying. Once that happens, we get that rotation. So, and from the Bitcoin top, we've taken a look at this in today's video. I'll show this right now while we're here. We'll add on Bitcoin's chart here, and we'll go over to the daily to prove a point. The last 2 cycles, and this does not mean it has to happen again, but the last 2 cycles from when we get alt season and the time Bitcoin tops, here's the Bitcoin top. Yes, we had a double top. I understand. Look at the price on the right, okay? Net top, Ethereum was at about 2,200. It topped at around 4,200. Dang near 2x. Let's go to 2017. And zoom. I'm using a MacBook mouse pad, so forgive my delay. Ethereum's at around 700. Let's just round up. It gets to 1,400. Close to it. Almost a 2x. So from the Bitcoin top, Ethereum does a 2x. Okay? We have not had that rotation yet. If Bitcoin topped right now or within the next month, we are talking about, in a similar move, Ethereum getting 8 to 9K from right now. That is why I think this is one way I look at it. People have been crapping on ETH for a while now. And even all the way since it was at the 100-month moving average. That was a great time to buy. It tagged that moving average perfectly. I think, from what I've seen from Ethereum the last 2 cycles, when Ethereum tops out, it's going to be the most obvious play. Like, of course Ethereum is going to be worth 10K or 8K, 11K, whatever, 17K. The longer we wait for a cycle top, the higher that price is going to be. If we get an early top, these alts aren't going to hit some of these price targets that I'm hoping for. I'm going by the assumption of a 4-year cycle, as we've had before. And should we get a 4-year cycle again, I'm assuming closer to 200K Bitcoin. And for anyone who's new here, wondering why am I saying 200K Bitcoin? Let's go over to the weekly. Okay. Let's go over to the weekly and we'll remove a couple of these things. So every cycle, not everyone likes the rainbow chart, but I think fibs show this too. Golden ratio, we got to like 10.618 or something there, but you can tell by the 2017 top, Bitcoin outperformed and just blew things out of the water, okay? Last cycle, Bitcoin hit a lower fib area, okay? First time around, just got past the 3618. The double top it got to the 4236, almost perfectly. Every cycle, Bitcoin hits a lower fib, okay? So if it was between the 3618 to the 4236, to me that takes this area out of contention, okay? However, we have had inflation the last 4 years. Our dollars are devalued by 25%, so I think it's fair to assume a higher target because our dollars are cheaper. Okay, that's going to, if more people are going to get into Bitcoin and our dollars are cheaper, that's going to naturally inflate the price. Okay, and that's, by the way, one of the great things about Bitcoin. So we have our fib target. Okay, we have our log regression, and you see, even though the tops are getting lower in the log regression, we can conservatively assume somewhere in these orange bands. Where are the orange bands? 150 to mid 200K, right? We've also had Bitcoin hitting, let's add on these indicators. I'll add on the log regression, and I'll add on the pi cycle. Okay, we've had Bitcoin hitting the upper areas of the log regression and the pi cycle. We had the pi cycle trigger last cycle, the cycle before, but we also had Bitcoin tag the pi cycle upper moving average and then fall to the side. Okay, something's going to change here. Okay, Bitcoin is not going to trigger the pi cycle this time, in my opinion. Now, if we hit another lower fib, here's the 3618, which I just showed you was the area, this 3618, 4236, where Bitcoin topped last time, and we see every cycle it tops, or it tags a lower fib extension. Lower fib extension, so we're looking between 155 to 200K. The upper pi cycle moving averages here, the log regressions here. I think that's a lot of confluence to say, somewhere in the upper 100Ks. I think there's a lot of things. And if we don't get that, then this cycle's different. If we get above it and we hit the pi cycle moving average and really rip it up, okay, then the log regression's broken. And again, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with things being a little bit more bullish than all this is showing us, because again, the charts will show us when we are getting alt season. However, some people are saying early top, and we're not even going to hit all this. We're only going to hit, let's go to the daily here. I have, oh my God, I got to take off the log regression. It always screws things up if you keep it on. Let's get rid of that too. People are saying, you know what? If we get an early top, we're only going to hit 138 to 150K. Now, 155K, that's the macro 2618. Again, the macro is from the 2021 high to the 2022 low, okay? That's our fib extension. And from a recent high, we have a 2618, a micro fib here at 138K. So 138K to 155K, this is what people are saying or predicting if we get an early cycle top in September, October. Could that happen? Sure. Will it happen? I think that's the popular theory right now, and I gotta say, I'm not convinced. Everything is still within the metrics of former cycles, and until those metrics break, I just don't see it. Now, if all of a sudden we get Bitcoin dominance falling, Tether dominance, we talked about this on last Friday's video, the Tether dominance, if all of a sudden, I think this will be a way to tell where the top is. If Tether dominance hits this 100-month moving average at around 3.5%. That's one way I think we might be able to tell where Bitcoin is topping. So if we get these indicators going off, total 3 ripping through former all-time highs. This is some of the last cycle when total 3, this total market cap outside of Bitcoin and ETH, when it broke from its all-time highs, we were a couple months from the top. We are approaching that. If we all of a sudden break through all-time highs, I'm going to say set your timer. We're probably within a couple months. But those metrics haven't changed. The only metric I'll say gives me pause is one we talked about in today's Ethereum video, and that's ETH dominance. ETH dominance, let me overlay Bitcoin's chart to kind of show you. It's the only one that kind of gives me pause as to, okay, maybe a cycle top could be coming soon. Okay, ETH dominance, you can see rips up after Bitcoin tops. Okay, really rips up. Last cycle, when was ETH dominance ripping up? Right here. And there's this common area that ETH dominance rips up to when there's alt season. It's around 18%. Right now, Ethereum dominance is at around 13%. Now, it can get to 18% within the next month. It can. Or the next, let's say 2 months. All right, September, October. It can do that. Will it do that? I don't know. This thing, This is not factoring in any pullbacks. I think if there's a pullback, back to the 0.5, any pullback is probably going to add another 2 to 4 weeks to this. So I'm expecting a pullback a little bit in September, and I think that puts us in the classic 4-year cycle. So I just want to explain that for anyone who's new here. And by the way, I see the views on my channels going up again, more comments. Anytime the views are going up tends to be, when the price is high. So you want to be careful about buying when everyone's here. Okay? You got to stick on my channel. I tell you, look for opportunities when there's fear, be cautious when there's greed, because a lot of you, I'm speaking to you right now, only show up when things are good. You want to change that mindset and be paying attention when things are bad. That is how you buy at a discount. But a lot of people, they get sad, they get upset when prices go down, they stop paying attention. You need to almost have a contrarian view and remove that emotion, or use emotion as an indicator. If things are euphoric and you're feeling FOMO, not a good time to buy. If Ethereum just did, this massive move, what did I say it was inside of 4 months? If Ethereum just did a 200% move inside of 4 months, probably not a time to buy. So be patient. There is always another play. You do not have to chase. There is always another play. All right, let me get back to comments. I had to go through that. Do I think it can drop that much? I do think it can drop that much. I've been here since 2017. I've seen some crazy drops happen. Not saying it will. Again, there's no certainties, only probabilities. And I think whether or not it will drop that much, doesn't matter. But having a patient mindset and just not chasing, because if you chase and you're feeling FOMO and like you're going to miss out, that's how you're going to wreck yourself in the short to medium term if the market doesn't stay mega bullish. And speaking of which, where is that one chart? Here we go. We talk about this in all my stock videos, but the S&P 500 Shiller PE ratio, I just scroll past it. The market's changed over time, but back when we had the dot-com bubble, it was topping here in the mid-40s. We got a little similar of a pullback like we did in 1998 when they started rate cuts. We had rate cuts before. If all of a sudden the Shiller PE starts we're close to that bubble area. So again, these AI stocks, Palantir, NVIDIA, they're doing great. That they're getting close to $5 trillion for NVIDIA. You got to be careful. In my opinion, now's the time to be extremely careful. Crypto, it can make you money quick. It can lose you money quick. Any thoughts on SWFTC? Thanks. SWFTC. Swift coin, I assume. Let's get Swifty. Rick and Morty reference. I have not looked at this one before, so let's do a little bit of research. I don't want to blow smoke. SWFTC. What do we got? This sometimes takes a second. Swift coin, the number 355 coin. It has a market cap of $100 million. I'm just rounding. Anytime you're outside the top 50, much less the top 100, I think you're playing with a lot more risk. Now, if this is when Swiftcoin started, SWFTC, I'm looking at the Coinbase one. They don't always have the oldest chart. Let's go to, sometimes it's hard to find the oldest chart, and I just want to make sure I'm working with as much data as possible. Has it really been around this long? That's not going to give me anything compared to what this one can. All right, market cap 100 million. Any thoughts on it? Well, I'll just tell you, if you're outside the top 50, much less 100, be very careful. Your risk increases exponentially. And this thing is obviously showing strength. It's been moving up. Let's put some fibs on it we'll just go from the average low here to the high. Let's just do that and see how this thing is staircasing up. But do be careful. do be careful. Let's even look at how it behaves with Bitcoin. All right, so you can see right now it's moved with Bitcoin. And, last time when Bitcoin moved up, there was a little delay and then it pumped. And we haven't had that. This has been the longest delay in a while. So if all of a sudden Bitcoin starts dropping, this can drop. And, it's really up to you. I don't know anything about this coin. You may have done a lot of research on this one and love this coin, and that's great. I will caution you, though, in the world of crypto, if you look to research any crypto, they're going to say all the great things about it. So my homework to you would be, what are the things you like about it? Find your top 3 and find 3 things you don't like about it. Try to be objective. Again, that's what market psychologists do. We're trying to be objective and not just fill ourselves with hopium that, this thing is going to go 100x. It might, it might die too. But I do like that it's moving with Bitcoin, first of all. Let's throw in our moving averages too. I do like how it's honoring the moving averages as well and maintaining strength. I mean, it's been maintaining strength since the bottom of October 23, and it keeps going up. That's good. Let's see. Let's do this. I wonder what this will look like. I like to look at coin pairings to see, is it growing strength or losing strength against Bitcoin? And overall, since 23, I mean, it did get down to those lows before, but I'd say overall the trend is up. As far as, it isn't in one of these patterns where it's just dying against Bitcoin. I do like that we're seeing some higher highs here now. That could have been a local topping area. But if we get an alt season, when I see the charts that I just looked at, I start to gain confidence that this could do well in an alt season rotation. Let me put it that way. I'm not saying it has to or it's going to, but when I see charts showing that an altcoin is moving up with Bitcoin, or even its valuation against Bitcoin has these positive spikes, I like seeing that. I'm just showing you chart-wise. I don't know jack squat about this coin, to be clear. So chart-wise, there are some things I like about it. My cautionary tale would be it's number 350 on the overall crypto list, so, be careful. We are bleeding out today, Pixel Pusher says. Let's go back to Bitcoin. First weekly sell signal. We had one flashing last week and then it went away. But it's we talked about this inverse head and shoulders. Let me get rid of this fib. There we go. We have the inverse head and shoulders, and that line is going to be support. It's right at that line and the 10-week moving average. But we have a weekly sell signal. All the things I said about the stochastic and the MACD being bearish on the weekly, true for Bitcoin. Now, right now, that trend line is holding up, but we're kind of losing that 50, and I give more weight to the 50. Could we get down to the 100-day moving average? Sure. The 102 area, to me, is a line in the sand. So if all of a sudden we get very bearish late this month, I would be looking at the 200-week moving average and the massive 1618 fib to hold up. This is good support right here, but it can break, okay? And if so, I would be taking a look at 102K as sort of the line in the sand, worst case scenario. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but yeah. Do I think this is a bear trap before takeoff? Well, bear trap would mean, that this is the bottom, which, we just made a case that sure, it could be. However, recently, we'll see. The S&P, is it just going to keep chopping up? The S&P has been doing so damn good lately, and it's been so green for so long. Ever since, Heikin-Ashi-wise, since April, we haven't had any sort of sizable dip since around that April time. Yes, there's a little correction, but we've just been staying at the 20 all the way up. Now this is kind of rounding out. Sorry, that's my cat's feeder in the background. And my voice that I recorded. I got to let the cat know when it's time to feed. But I do see this sort of rounding out, and I wonder when, it just seems like there's a lot of almanac historical data to show that, let's go to the crypto one first. September, worst month for crypto overall. Okay, so we have that, even though the last couple of years have been good. So there's that. We also have, just on average, we had that July pump that even extended further and then a bit of chop for a few months. I think there's a couple things historically that lead me to believe that it isn't the bear trap. If you're of the mind, and I'm not saying you're wrong, that we have an early cycle top, then I would say, yeah, bear trap, if that's what you believe. If you're like me and you're like, you know what, probably another 4-year cycle, give or take a few months, then you're more in line with the classic almanac data. And that's until some metrics break, that's where I am. If Ethereum dominance is getting up to 40%, I'll change my tune real quick. Let's get over to Bitcoin. All right. Let's see here. Let me refresh the comments. Pixel Pusher, always appreciate when you're here. Bitcoin would have to fly past the moon for Ethereum to hit 200 or 20K level. Yeah, I mean, it would. There's people calling for 250, 300K Bitcoin. I don't see it. I just don't. Not saying it can't happen. I just don't think it's probable. But yeah, Tom Lee talking about 17K Bitcoin. I only believe that can happen if Bitcoin is at 200K. I think it can get there in a normal 4-year cycle, or even if the cycle tops, sometime early next year, let's say Q1, early Q2 of 2026, sure, that's where we could see, that orange box, 200, 250K Bitcoin. If we're there, and Bitcoin has a 4 trillion market cap, okay, what is 40% of 4 trillion? All right, that's like, would that be 1.6 trillion? If Ethereum has a 1.6 trillion market cap, that's going to be just a little over a 3x. Okay, 4812, maybe, I don't know. I just don't see Ethereum getting past 12K. That's my personal opinion. Let's see, been hearing Bitcoin hits 130K-ish as a substop, and they expect it to go past that towards 170. Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes along with what we were talking about before with, when we drew our fib from the micro high to low. Let's do that again. Okay, we're going to take a look at our fib target. Take it off log. We have our macro fib at 155K and our micro fib, 134, 138. It's a little different every time I draw it. But that general area. Again, early cycle theorists or predictors say here, and, I'd say be careful of that trap. So many people, including myself to an extent, and I have to be careful how I word things. So many people get caught up in predictions. Again, predictions don't matter as much as your strategy. Have a strategy that is flexible and nimble enough to get you profits or get in on good discounts when it happens. Because we don't control the market. But if the dip happens, are you going to be able to have that opportunity to buy it up? Do you have a budget? Are you going to be able to recognize the euphoria in order to take profits? Will you take profits if you see a 5x, a 10x? Have a plan and a strategy that will supersede your emotions, because your emotions can get the better of you. I know too many people, friends and family, who, they get in over here or here, and then they're bag holding for 4 years. So, if all of a sudden your friends from 5 years ago start asking you about crypto because they know you're into it, that's an indicator. So just have a plan that is better than any prediction or strategy. I don't care if we get an early top or a top 6 months from now or a year from now. As long as the data stays within the metrics that I'm showing you, I'm willing to be patient, dollar cost average, and ride it out. Okay, I just need VeChain and ZIL to hit past previous all-time highs. I hope it does for you. VeChain's one of those, Yeah, I hope so, but be careful of the old coins. I think regardless, people say we're waiting for rate cuts to ignite the bull run. Actually, that's a good segue. That is a good segue. Let me show you something. Actually, let's do this. USINT. I'm glad you said that. I'm very glad you said that. We're going to do something here, and we're going to add on the S&P. I haven't shown this one chart in a while, but here's my point. You can see where the rate cuts are, and you can see what the market does. I used to show this chart a while ago, last year to, about this previous spring. When the Fed is doing an average of 50 basis point cuts, that tends to not be good, or hasn't been. That is when we get these market sell-offs. You see the SP, you see the massive rate cuts. When the Fed is cutting by 25 basis point average, holding or even raising, the market can surprise people. This was the dot-com bubble. Okay, this was, let's go to 2020. All right, 2020, the Fed was cutting rates, a little bit. They had an average of 25 basis points, but then COVID hit and things fell through the floor. People were already predicting a recession around this time, and I think COVID kind of messed things up a little bit, because then all of a sudden the Fed printed $7 trillion out of thin air. Okay, what's the market doing here? Okay, the Fed was raising rates, but we had inflation. Here's another factor to keep in mind. You're like, well, why did the market go down here if the rates are going up? We had inflation. Inflation's that other factor where market bottoms tend to coincide with where inflation is. Okay, we recently had an average of 25 basis point cut. Okay, a little bit of a dip there in the April whole tariff situation. Now we're going up again. I don't know if the Fed's going to cut rates. We just heard that inflation, was it not the CPI, but the PPI went up more than expected. If unemployment and PPI are staying flat or low, let's get rid of this here, even though that would be important cross data. If unemployment's staying flat or low and inflation's kind of going up, why would they cut? So, Trump has been insulting Jerome Powell every which way, even though it's not his choice, it's committee choice. And, why reignite inflation if job numbers are fine and inflation is kind of heating up again? Part of the thinking is that, Trump, with the recent big beautiful bill, that they want to reignite inflation and print all this money to make the debt, we have record like $37 trillion, to make the debt cheaper, air quotes, so we don't have a deflationary death spiral. That's the word on the street. Okay, but I think something's got to give sometime. But I'd be careful. The rate cut narrative, I guess, is my TLDR. If they are cutting rates by 50 basis points, be careful. Now, last year, they did cut by 50 in September, but then they don't meet in October. And then after that, they cut by 25. And so in the end, the Fed cut by an average of 25 basis points, and then they paused. So if they cut by 50, just be careful of that. If they're cutting by an average of 50 basis points, watch out. And one of the indicators you can watch, the yield curve on inversion. Let's get rid of the moving average here. This is just one of the metrics, the US 10-year minus 2-year. When yields start spiking, that's bad. So, it's chopping, it's been coming down a little bit. If yields start spiking, and I think if the 10-year starts getting above 5%, watch out. Because if yields become more attractive or have better return rates than stocks, people are going to transition into treasuries and get out of the stock market. So there's a couple ways that just works against you. I hope that helps. Hey, I'm just trying to provide some context for you, so I hope that helps sort of clear things up. But yeah, if they cut by 25 basis points, or if they don't cut, that should be fine. And kind of make a joke of things, we're always one Trump tweet away from the market pumping or dumping by 10%. So hopefully he stays off his phone. I'm with you in the camp that we aren't near the top yet. It seems like none of the targets have been hit that indicate Bitcoin has peaked. Yeah, let's go back over to Bitcoin. So, I showed you Fibonacci-wise. Let's go, tell you what. Actually, let's do a clean chart. Bitstamp. I like to pull up this one because I don't have to erase things. Let's go through a couple things here. Let's do ultimate RSI. We'll go through these one by one. Okay. You see where these tops are and how the ultimate RSI gets way up here. The ultimate RSI still has a ways to go, but even if you were of a more conservative mindset, and you're like, well, is it going to hit sort of this trend line that's got these lower highs? Sure. That could be one way to look at it. It hasn't hit the fib extension average. We haven't hit the log regression average. We haven't hit the pi cycle average. All these things we haven't hit yet. Okay. Now, under some of these different metrics, okay, we can look at some similarities. So that's the ultimate RSI. Let's just go through a couple of these. Let's do stochastic. Okay. You see where we top. We're on the monthly right now. Okay. Now we're looking for the stochastic to be overbought on the monthly. Okay. You can see how there's a double top last cycle, or it stayed overbought for a while, and then started to roll over. Okay. Now we were overbought back in December, January, when the market was doing pretty well, and March. I thought I saw March. I'm wrong. Yeah, it kind of ended around March. Okay, when it started turnover, that was the top. The stochastic on the monthly has a ways to go. So, I'm looking for the stochastic to get up there as well. The ultimate RSI shows room to run. The stochastic, the regular RSI, again, you can say, well, it gets weaker every time. And I'll be with you on that. But, we haven't hit there yet. Okay? And again, we can say overbought for a while. There's the bubble risk indicator. Obviously, these bubbles get lower each time. 2017, it was around 80. 2021, it was at 70. So let's just say, okay, are we waiting for 60? We haven't hit there yet. So I do wonder if there is any rate cuts or anything. Here's in my mind what I'm thinking, what catalyst would there be to all of a sudden hit the euphoria button? Kind of like 2021, where people, Wall Street Bets is going nuts. People are posting that song, Pump It Up, and everyone's acting crazy. Friends and family who never talk about stocks start talking about stocks and cryptos. What needs to happen for that to return? Okay. Is that part of the plan to cut rates? Trump wants to cut rates by, 300 basis points or, yeah. So we'll see. If inflation reignites, could that delay the top to 2026? Kind of like what happened in 2021. In 21, they were printing money, and I got something for you here. Let's try. We're going to do something. I don't think I've done this yet. We're going to add on the United States Central Bank balance sheet, USC BBS. Okay? And I'll show you what I mean. So this is the quantitative tightening, quantitative easing. Okay? The U.S. Central Bank balance sheet, okay, they started going to QE back here in September 19. Obviously, we had COVID, but then all of a sudden they printed $7 trillion out of thin air, okay? End of Trump's term, early Biden's term. They were printing like there's no tomorrow. Now, you can see, yes, that eventually caused a lot of inflation, okay? But you can see how the market's just ripped up. Are we going to get another one of those? I don't think so. Or at least I'm not expecting that. I could be wrong. And if we go to the U.S. Central Bank balance sheet, I like to show people this on the monthly and say, hey, we are, kind of what I was just talking about, we just hit the 100-month moving average from when the Fed last time turned back to QE. So I'm not expecting one of these where all of a sudden, we go from, God, look at this, 4 trillion to 7 trillion. So 3 trillion out of thin air up to 9 trillion. Okay? Crazy. How low was it here? 4 trillion, 3.7. So, what did I say before? 7 trillion, so 6 trillion, 5 trillion, whatever. But I think a little QE might change things. So that's something to pay attention to. They need to gently adjust rates, or at least to stop QT, yes. If you're really interested in going down a rabbit hole, look up the repo market and what's going on with that. Let's see. We need a real positive narrative to get the sentiment up. That's reality and the most important thing for retail. Yeah, I'll say this, though, as far as crypto, retail follows the whales. And when the whales come in, we don't know. Sometimes I like to coin it, magic internet money. When's that magic internet money all of a sudden going to just come in out of nowhere and give us some of these crazy things or crazy moves? Now, some of you haven't been here since 2017 or 21. Maybe you're here in the last couple of years. When crypto starts deciding to turn things on and go, it is crazy. Okay, so I was here in 2017. I've obviously experienced the Wall Street bets craze last time. So it does seem to, at least in my experience, it does seem to kind of come out of nowhere. But when it does, it's crazy time, and it doesn't last for long. So just be ready for that. An argument going out there, and I had a comment in a recent video. Someone said, don't listen to this guy, which is fine. You don't have to listen to me. But someone said, the ETFs are changing things. And that person might be right. The ETFs could be making Bitcoin less volatile and more steady over time. That's possible, okay? I'm not saying that person's wrong. They might be right. However, we still fall within all the classic metrics of prior cycles. Okay, and I've gone through a couple of those. We still fall within those metrics. So something's got to break. Now, being here since 2017, every cycle there is a new buzzword. Back in 2017, it was Web3. This is Web3, whatever the hell that means. DeFi, all this crap. I'm like, all right, I don't really know what that means. I'm just being honest with you. At the time, I don't care, but people are making money. I wanted to make money. I got in sometime around this summer. I was lucky to get in around June, July. Made some great money. Could have made better money. I didn't sell at the very top. Not sure many who did, but I had altcoins do very well. I got a 200x play on one. Tron, if you're wondering. I was ready for that last cycle, though. Okay? Now, we had memes last cycle, Elon, Doge to the moon, all that stuff. What was the buzzword for last cycle? Someone in the comments help me out if you remember. But every cycle there's a new buzzword or thing to trap people in, okay? Now, people thought we were going to get sort of a higher top, kind of like we did in 2013. Let me reset this. That we're going to get this double top. And that didn't happen. Or a higher high. We just got this double top. And then from the double top, people are saying, oh, we're going to have a head and shoulders. And that never happened, unless you consider this to be, Hunchback of Notre Dame here, okay? I'm not trying to make fun of anyone. Just we didn't get that higher high like 2013. We didn't get the head and shoulders. So that was a fake out. This cycle, the one buzzword is institutionalization, courtesy of our ETFs. You want to know where ETFs got approved? It was right in here. It fell off, and then it pumped, and people were like, hey, early cycle top, and then, we went down for a while. People were like, see, that was early cycle top, no alt season, then we've been pumping again. And then we fell with tariffs, and now we're pumping again, okay? So I don't fall for the narratives until otherwise. If we truly don't get an alt season, Like, we don't know that yet. We don't have the benefit of hindsight. Now, we have Bitcoin dominant. If Bitcoin dominance starts breaking above 74% and just chopping higher, then I'll say, okay, this cycle is truly different. The ETF institutionalization narrative is right, okay? Because we've had lower highs in Bitcoin dominance. But things are still within the same metrics. We have dominance breaking down underneath the 50-week moving average. Do I think dominance could spike up again, 65% or even high as 71%? Sure. But I don't buy into this narrative yet, because Bitcoin, it can still move up or down on any given day by 5 to 10%. That's just how it is, okay? And it's not digital gold as much as it is a speculative tech asset. Now, over time, it has become less volatile. That's what the log regression band shows. But it's still very volatile. So, again, I don't see it yet. I don't see that coming true. Now, maybe, Bitcoin will dip again to the 70, 50K, or even 100K levels, have a bottom around there. Who knows? But, yeah, I still think we're within the same realm. Let's see. Pixel Pusher, appreciate your comments. Let's see. Looking at this cycle versus other ones, you can see we are stair-stepping almost as a rocket moves. I'd agree with that. It worries me a lot for altcoins. I'm not as worried. I get why you have that feeling. I've talked to people about that, because I've talked to others who have that sentiment. However, we're still within the metrics of this. We have just started. When Ethereum, Bitcoin recently changed course, this is what's happened in the past, and it's been no different. Last cycle, let's go to the weekly. This is taking way too long. Hurry it up. Last cycle, ETH, Bitcoin, look at this. It took like 600 days or whatever from the low to alt season. 600 days. The cycle before Ethereum, Bitcoin bottomed and went up within a month, okay? So you can take the average of that or take it as a range, be like, maybe it'll take 30 days to 600 days. Or you could go the opposite. Maybe, every cycle it's an extra 600 days, whatever. I've been comparing this cycle more so to 2017, that this looks like the way it was dying is setting up more so with the V-shaped recovery, which can still fit the 4-year cycle. Okay, you see it, my crappy drawn lines, going back in time, whatever. So we still have time, but this just turned bullish. Macro-wise, we're above the 382, and we got above the 50-week moving average. Getting above the 50 means you're now bullish. So this is confirming we are in phase 2, which is still early. And alt season-wise, we haven't spiked yet. Dilution. Yeah, I'd say dilution. Notwithstanding, yes, there's a million altcoins, but I'll tell you this, in 2017, there was only really 50 altcoins, if that worth paying attention to. And even last cycle, I felt there was only 100 altcoins worth paying attention to. In last cycle, there were tens of thousands of altcoins, but people make altcoins all the time now. They probably make 1,000 altcoins a day, but none of them are doing anything, or they're just scams on pump fund. So I'm not really fully into that narrative, altcoin dilution. But yeah, we are only in phase 2. And, we've recently started to see large caps. XRP obviously has been doing well for a hot minute, but Chainlink started to do well. Are we seeing the signs of maybe phase 3 beginning to start? Maybe. Something to keep an eye on. Let's see. If Bitcoin dominance moons were done, yep, I agree. If Bitcoin dominance gets above that 74%, then I will change my opinion. I let the data drive my opinions, okay? But the data is still within all the ranges of cycles we've had before, so I've not changed my opinion. Again, people might be right about institutionalization, but we don't have data to prove that yet. Said something else. Heard diamond hands a lot last cycle. Oh yeah, I still share diamond hand memes with my crypto buddies. The cycle chart does give me some comfort. We're now just getting a phase 2. Yeah, I've been trying to tell people, like, screenshot this, okay? And if we get, a recession, screenshot this one too. Just to, have the mindset that this can do well. I think it's slow because I'm just now understanding the cycle chart. Last season, I had no idea about this stuff. Yeah, on this channel, that's what I try to provide is just sort of a macro analysis. Sort of taking that bird's eye view, because our emotions, and when we're buying certain alts, I think it sort of pigeonholes us or kind of skews our bias. And so, I try to be careful of any bias I have, and sometimes people, share that with me in the comments, and that's fine. Like, we all have bias. We're human. And, that's my goal. With my experience in the field of psychology, I didn't start making money consistently or as well until I started applying some of my own psychological rules to my investing strategy. Sorry, let me get some water. Once I stopped ever buying things based off impulse or during times of greed, it's paid off over 90% of the time. Okay, 2022, near the bottoms, I was buying Palantir, some cryptos, Nvidia, paid off really well. And some of the Roblox, some of those decisions are still paying off on the 2022 and 23 lows. You can see how the S&P, it gets to these levels, you don't want to miss it. An indicator as simple as moving averages. It doesn't need much more than that. When you're getting down there, again, as I showed in this chart before, when you're getting these drops, you don't want to miss those. So I have a strategy where you can capitalize on the fear and those drawbacks. These are the opportunities, and most people don't stay in when the markets are doing bad. I like to say that I'm middle of the road. I'm an equal opportunity hater, okay, when it comes to politics. Whenever a certain person, whether it's a Democrat in office or a Republican, whenever people on the opposite side of the aisle, friends I have, start posting memes of a president in front of a red chart, in front of all the stocks and cryptos, and everything's red, to me, that's a buy signal. Whenever people who are politically opposed to whoever's in power, they're posting like, oh, the stock market sucks under this guy. To me, that's a buy signal. Sometimes it's that simple. And it's like, well, people post this when we're closer to the bottom. So if people are hating on, however the current administration's doing it, I'm not saying I'm for either. I think they're all a bunch of crooks. To me, that's a buy signal. And that's usually around these giant dips. When people are like, oh, this guy's screwing everything up. Okay? Again, try to take a macroscopic view, not get sucked into it with your own emotion. I'll talk about this a little bit. The first part of our brain to develop before we're even born is our limbic system, the emotional part of our brain. That's why babies cry, when they're hungry, and are very excited when they're happy. They're not thinking with their frontal lobe. It's not developed. Your frontal lobe doesn't finish developing until your mid-20s. You've probably heard this on a Joe Rogan podcast or something, whatever. It's true. Okay? I read the research too. It is true. Now, when you use your frontal lobe, you're trying to remove that emotion or use the emotion as an indicator. So do things to calm your mind so you can see things objectively and remove your bias as much as possible. That's all I'm trying to say. Let's see. Yeah, it's something I've learned through the pains. Not making emotional buy sells. I'm a hardened vet. Hard times create hard men. Probably heard that. And these dips do not scare me. Hell yeah. Not until I know the cycle's done. I'm not flinching. I agree with you. I think we're on the same page, Pixel Pusher. I agree with you. And I've made mistakes. We all have in investing. So to me, those mistakes, they cost money. But I think of it this way, kind of like a college course. A college course costs, $1,000 these days. few $100s. So if you make a mistake and it costs you, $1,000, a couple thousand, a few hundred, consider that like a college lesson. Like, what is the lesson you learned from that? Okay. Write those down. Like, what are some of your top 10 or even top 5 lessons you've learned from losing money? Okay. Write those down, and, you'll be cautious before you make a similar mistake again. Anyways, I think we've talked about a bit today. So this looks like a good time to call it. I have not done a live stream in a while. Had a little bit of time. Wanted to just do one for you guys. So I appreciate everyone coming along. Pixel Pusher. We had A.Dev and the man. Any of you that commented, thumbs up. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. But we'll call it there. It's a Tuesday afternoon / maybe evening for some of you. So anyone who's here, appreciate you guys. I'll try to do this at a better time. I just had some random time pop up, so I had to do it. But, if any of you frequent subscribers, watchers notice videos have been less, it's summertime, went on a little bit of a vacation, had some family stuff, all good things. Everyone's doing well. But yeah, that's why I had less videos. That's why I was like experimenting it with some of the YouTube shorts, and I'll get back to doing shorts again. There's no reason I need a 20-minute video on Total 3. I can do that in 2 to 3 minutes, even though I like to frickin' run my mouth way too much. I mean, that's something I think about. Like, here, you guys might think, like, this guy is a psychologist, or he's worked in psychology for 10 years, and he talks this much. Do you even listen to your patients? Yes, I do. I think I do so much listening that during these videos is when it's time for it to come out. So I'm just like nerding out on you guys. But I can do 2 to 3 minute videos on some of these, and just share at least where things are at and, where things could go. So I'll try to do some more YouTube shorts. And now that I'm back, no vacations in the near future or anything, may go out on a hiking or kayaking trip, just that'll take a day or two, but nothing crazy. But we're going to be we are back to our regular schedule. And I appreciate you all. So let me check comments one more time. Let's see. Pixel Pusher. There's been so many instances of cycle where had I invested, I would be completely broken, destitute. Yeah. So, hey, that shows you're learning, which is great. Great stream as usual. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. And great comments to drive the conversation. Thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic afternoon, rest of your week. I'll put out some other videos this week. Maybe, I haven't done an altcoin, even though I talked about Ethereum. It wasn't really an altcoin specific video. I was running down price predictions for altcoins. I think I did Cardano. I think I'm around here. Like, I have to do a Cardano or Chainlink price prediction video. That's a way to drive the views and the subs and look in hindsight at how right or wrong that I'll be. But it's an interesting experiment I'm running to see. Speaking of hindsight, I'm doing these price predictions because I want to be able to look back and be like, what did I get right? What did I get wrong? And what can I learn from what I got wrong? So that's why I'm doing those. Plus, they're kind of fun. But yeah. Anyways, I think maybe I'll do one of those tomorrow. And then a stock video, and we'll call it there. So have a wonderful day and take care. Did I get wrong? And oh my God, I was talking that loud. I need to get my mouth away from the mic. If I ruined anyone's eardrums, I apologize.